All right, aloha, everybody. Welcome to our monthly College of Engineering Leadership Seminar Series, always sponsored by our favorite supporter, Donna and Ken Hayashida and Hayashida Ohana. So we thank them for their support for our leadership efforts, not just in the seminar series, but in many of our other programs as well. So mahalo to Ken and Donna. I'm Brandon Morial, I'm the Dean for the College of Engineering, and this is one of the exciting parts of our month and one of our programs that we always enjoy bringing our friends from industry, whether they're engineers or not, to share some of their experiences, their challenges, and just some of their thoughts on leadership for our students and our faculty and staff, but also to many of our alumni and friends in industry who are joining us online. So thank you very much for joining us. This month is no different than many of our other months. So we have a very special friend of mine, Eric Yeaman, and I'm gonna let Josh introduce Eric, but it's been a pleasure of mine to know and just kind of pick Eric's brain over the years and travel with him abroad, and it's been fun to get to know him because he brings a wealth of experience to our community. I also wanted to just note, we do have a special guest here today in the audience, Richard Sullivan, who is an alum of ours, also a previous leadership seminar speaker. And which one was it? Was it the alumni, distinguished alumni, or was it the Dean's Award of Excellence? A few years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know, I lose track.
We were thinking at the time.
Yeah. That Dean still loses his memory. Thank you, Richard, for joining. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Josh to kind of introduce Eric. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ethan, and with me today is Josh. We'd like to welcome everyone to the Leadership Seminar Series of May, presented by the Hayashida family. We got an amazing speaker here today, so let's jump right in. Josh will start off by introducing Eric Yeaman.
Eric Yeaman is the founder and managing partner of Hoku Capital. Hoku was founded in 2019 to provide strategic advisory services and to engage in strategic investments in select Hawaii-based companies, as well as national private equity, infrastructure, and real estate partners. Prior to that, Mr. Yeaman has been a huge part of many companies, which include being the president and chief operating officer of First Hawaiian Bank from June 2015 to August 2019. At First Hawaiian, he oversaw strategic planning, retail banking, consumer banking, enterprise technology, enterprise operations, and bank properties. Mr. Yeaman also served as president and chief executive officer of Hawaiian Telecom from 2008 to 2015, where he successfully led the company through its Chapter 11 bankruptcy proceedings, its process to become a publicly traded company, and led the company's transformation into Hawaii's technology leader. In 2008, he served as senior executive vice president and chief operating officer of Hawaiian Electric Company Incorporated, where he was responsible for the leadership of its day-to-day Oahu operations. From 2003 to 2008, he served as financial vice president, treasurer, and chief financial officer of Hawaiian Electric Industries, which was Hiko's parent company. He was chief operating and financial officer for Kamehameha Schools from 2000 to 2003, and began his career leading the numerous financial statement audits and business consulting projects at Arthur Andersen LLP from 1989 to 2000. Mr. Yeaman currently serves on nonprofit boards of Harold K. L. Castle Foundation and Friends of Hawaii Charities. In addition, he is the chairman of the board of Alexander and Baldwin, a director of Alaska Air Group, DR Fortress, Lani Hau Properties LLC, Lani Ranch Company Incorporated, a member of the Hawaii Asia Pacific Association, as well as an advisory board member of the Shadley College of Business at the University of Hawaii. Mr. Yeaman was also on the board of the Queens Health Systems and the Queens Medical Center from 2005 to 2017, and the chairman of the board from 2012 to 2017. Mr. Yeaman has been honored throughout the years as Salesperson of the Year by Sales and Marketing Executives of Honolulu in 2017. He was one of the University of Hawaii Alumni Association Distinguished Alumni in 2016. He was inducted into the University of Hawaii Shadley College of Business Hall of Honor in 2010. He was recognized as the Financial Executive of the Year. He was sponsored by Robert Half International in 2004, as well as one of the Pacific Business News 40 under 40. Mr. Yeaman was born and raised in Kona, Hawaii, earned his Bachelor of Business Administration degree in accounting from University of Hawaii at Manoa, and is a certified public accountant in the state of Hawaii. I will have Eric begin with any opening remarks he'd like to share.
Thank you, Joshua. You gave my speech already. So, first of all, I want to thank, I guess I'll call you Dean Morioka, for the invitation. Fortunate to get to know him because our kids went to college at Michigan together. As well as we've traveled together and known each other for many years. And Brandon, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I thought it was going to be more students than alum. But when I came earlier, Joshua told me that it's finals. I'm thinking, if I was a student, I wouldn't be coming to listen to me. And so my speech was maybe more geared towards students. But I hopefully you guys will get something out of it. You know, Brandon asked me if I could speak about my leadership experience and some of the lessons that I've learned to that experience. And the toughest part about giving a speech like that is you got to talk about yourself the whole time, which I hate. But I'll do my best. But I thought I would just kind of share kind of my leadership journey, some of which was already covered, but I'll maybe add some color along the way. And then I'll maybe share about kind of the key leadership attributes that I felt that I learned that were critical in helping me be successful in the different opportunities that I had. And then I'll share a couple of stories at the end that hopefully will tell you kind of how those leadership attributes were sort of applied in different situations. And so, yeah, that's what I'm gonna share. You know, as I was reflecting on this opportunity, I basically came to UH almost 40 years ago as a freshman, 1985. And when I came to UH, I basically knew what I wanted to study, what I wanted to be, when I wanted to do it, who I wanted to do it for. I basically said I wanted to graduate in 4 years with my degree in accounting. I wanted to work for Arthur Andersen, and I wanted to be the Hawaii office managing partner until I retired. And Arthur Andersen at the time was the largest professional services firm in the world. And essentially, if you were a partner in that firm, you had to retire at 56. So I said, okay, 56 sounds good. But I was fortunate enough to my leadership journey to essentially pivot from working for Arthur Andersen after 11 years and ended up working for 4 of Hawaii's largest companies as a C-level executive in different roles. And also still sit and sat on 4 publicly traded boards that either are based here or have significant operations here, as well as chaired the Queen's Board for many years at a time that we went through significant transformation. And so as a result of all that, I was able to retire technically at 50, you know, and retire for me doesn't mean stop working. It basically means that I get to now do whatever I want with whomever I want, you know, essentially on my terms. And to me, it's been a total blessing to be able to have had the opportunity to have my whole career be here in Hawaii, and to be able to at 50 years old kind of pivot and just do the things that I want to do that ultimately support my family and hopefully make an impact on our community. So the journey is, you know, as background, I grew up in Kona. I actually grew up in this small town called Honauna, which is where the coffee farms are. And I'm the oldest of my father's 7 children. My mom had a daughter that was a year older, that was 2 years older than me before my parents got married. But my parents got divorced when I was about 10 years old. And as a result, I grew up in a poor community, poor family. I basically had to work. And so I basically worked on farms. I worked on nut farms, coffee farms, plumeria farms, tomato farm, cucumber farm. And the one thing I learned from farming was I didn't want to be a farmer. But it taught me the value of hard work. It taught me the value of a dollar. And it was the reason why I went to college. Because in this community, not too many people went to college. And I was the first person in my family on both sides of my parents to go to college. And I came here to UH, like I said earlier, studied accounting. I essentially, when I was a junior here at the business school, I said, I better get some experience in accounting. So I tried to go and get a job at one of the big 8 accounting firms. And so I talked to one of the recruiters, Arthur Anderson, because that was my target company. And this guy, Jeff Arce, was the recruiter. He said, Eric, you don't need to do an internship. I'll interview you right now for a full-time job. And I was just a junior at the time. So I said, okay. So I interviewed for the job and I said, well, I better not put my eggs all in one basket. So I went to interview with 3 other firms. And I was fortunate enough to get offers from all 4. And so I ended up, when I graduated, ended up working for Arthur Anderson here in Hawaii. But the good thing about that firm was if you had developed some kind of expertise, they would fly you anywhere in the world where they needed your resource. So I actually traveled 50% of the time that I was working for them, either on the mainland or, Asia Pacific area. So I got a lot of great experience in the time that I was there. My last 2 years at Arthur Anderson, I was asked by the managing partner to run the investigation. It was called the Financial and Management Audit of the Bishop Estate Commemorative. And for those of you who were around at that time, this was front page of the paper everyday situation. And, I was my late 20s, still pretty young. And I was working essentially 16 to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was that intense. And I remember driving home. I lived in Waikele at the time. Thinking, what am I doing? My daughter was not even a year old. She was just born. And I told myself, I got to stick it out. It'll be worth it. This is an investment in this organization and hopefully in my career. Ultimately, that project led to the removal of the trustees at the time. And the probate court removed the trustees, and they appointed a group of special purpose trustees. And that group of special purpose trustees hired our firm again, Arthur Anderson, essentially me, to help them with a variety of projects. And part of our recommendation in the financial management audit was that they adopt a CEO-based management structure. At the time, it was managed by 5 trustees. So when they hired the CEO, I met with the CEO, briefed him on all of our findings and what our recommendations were. He apparently went back to the trustees and said, why wouldn't we hire this guy to be the CFO? Because he knows pretty much everything we need to do. He said, well, it's up to you. You can interview him, see if he's interested in a job. So eventually I went through the process and I got hired as the CFO of Kamehameha Schools. At the time, now I had to implement all the recommendations that we came up with. And one of those recommendations was they needed to diversify their investment portfolio. And the single largest investment that they had was a $500 million investment in Goldman Sachs, which Goldman Sachs, they owned about 900% of Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs is the premier investment banking firm in the world, right? And Goldman Sachs decided they were going to go public. So here I was, 32 years old, CFO of Kamehameha Schools, Bishop Estate, working with Goldman on their sale, their IPO of their company, because we needed to manage how much of our position we could sell. It's just how it works. You can't flood the market with shares. And so I remember working with Hank Paulson, who later became Treasury Secretary under George Bush. And this guy was just amazingly impressive and super humble, super smart, great to work with, as well as other people from his team. And ultimately, that investment, once fully divested, was probably worth over $3 billion. And it was held for probably about 6 years altogether. So it was a significant appreciation in value, but the sale ultimately allowed for further diversification of their investment portfolio. And, I ended up working at Kamehameha Schools for about 2.5 years. That experience with Goldman Sachs really, as a financial person by background, really intrigued me and said, I really want to get more experience in Wall Street. And I didn't feel like I was going to be able to get that if I stayed at Kamehameha Schools. And as much as I wanted to continue to be there and help, I felt like I had a good team in place. I ended up, Sarbanes-Oxley got passed by Congress around that time. And the CFO of HEI, this guy Bob Mujol, I think he was in his early to mid 60s, basically told the CEO, Bob Clark at the time, saying, you know what, I'm too old for implement Sarbanes-Oxley. So Bob Clark's wife, Edwina, actually was my treasurer at Kamehameha Schools. And apparently she was telling Bob about, what kind of a boss I was. And so one day he picked up the phone and called me and said, hey, would you be interested in working as the CFO here at HEI? And I said, well, I haven't thought about it, but let me think about it. He goes, well, why don't you think about it? I'm going to be away for a week. And when I come back, let's get together. And one thing led to another. I ended up getting an offer. And at the time, HEI was the largest publicly traded company in Hawaii, measured by market cap. And now I had the opportunity to really deal with Wall Street almost on a daily basis. Probably in the time I was there for 5 years, I probably did 20 different public offerings, equity offerings, debt offerings, every quarter meeting with institutional investors in Wall Street. And so I really did get the experience that I was looking for when I went to HEI. But after a while, as a financial guy, I felt like, I really wanted to evolve into more operations. And I got promoted to COO of HECO 5 years into it. And I was just kind of getting things going. I was working on, I had like 5 different task forces, and we were trying to come up with what would the renewable strategy be for Hawaiian Electric. And then one day, I remember the day, April 1st of 2008, I got a call from the legendary Walter Dodds. He was no longer CEO of First Hawaiian, but he was still chairman of the board. And he left me a message. I called him right back as soon as I got the message. And he says, hey, Eric, you got some time? I said, sure. He said, you want me to come to your office, or you want to come to my office? He goes, given what I got to talk to you about, maybe better you come to my office. So I went over to his office, which is literally 1 block away. And I barely knew Walter. I probably had a 10-minute conversation with him, a year or two before that. So I went to his office, not sure what he wanted to talk to me about. And so when I got there, we chit-chatted for a couple minutes. And if you guys know Walter, he pretty much cuts to the chase pretty quickly. And he goes, I'm not sure if you know, but I'm on the board of Hawaiian Telecom. I'm the only local board member. And as you know from the papers, they're struggling. And the board, which the company was owned by the Carlyle, which is one of the largest private equity firms. They've been asking me if I would be willing to chair the board. And I've turned them down 3 times already. And finally today, I told them I would do it on 2 conditions. 1, you pay me $1 a year to do it. And 2, you let me pick the CEO. And he goes, that's why I called you. I want to know if you'd be interested in being the CEO of Hawaiian Telecom. Okay, this company was bankrupt, but not yet filed for bankruptcy. So I'm looking at Walter and I go, why would I do this? I'm COO of Hiko. I think my boss is probably going to retire in the not too distant future. They're the largest company in Hawaii. How does this make sense? You know, Walter, he just looked me straight in the eye. He said, Eric, I'm not going to twist your arm. But he says, all I ask is you give us a chance. Just listen to what we have to say. And if at the end you decide you don't want to do it, I will respect that. So I said, okay, Walter, because it's you asking, I will listen. I ended up meeting with the Carlisle guys. And I was thinking in my mind, I'm not going to like them. You know, they're probably arrogant private equity guys from New York City. But they're actually pretty nice guys. One of them was the former chair of the FCC, this guy, Bill Kennard. And started going through, doing my diligence about the company, what we needed to do. And I started to talk to my wife about it and you know, decided that the kicker was, you know, there were 1,600 employees. This company was on the brink. What happened? What would happen, you know, if somebody who is not from Hawaii went there to run this company and destroyed it even further? So with my wife's support and blessing, I decided to take on the challenge. I was 40 years old at the time, so I was still young, had the energy to work 7 days a week. And essentially, you know, got the team together and ultimately led to taking it through bankruptcy and returning the company to profitability. About a year or so before, you know, I left, Bob Harrison, who at the time still is the CEO of First Hawaiian Bank, he was interested in hiring a COO. And so he decided to come up and meet with me and asked me if I would be interested. And I told him I would, but I wouldn't be able to leave for another year for various reasons. And I said I wouldn't do it if you felt that, if I felt like it would get in the way of my relationship with Walter, because Walter was on the board of First Hawaiian. And usually you don't fraternize with the board members that often. And I told Bob, I said, you know, Walter is one of my closest friends. His relationship is a lot to me. And so if that's going to be a problem, then I wouldn't be interested. He said, Eric, I know you guys are close, no problem. So I ended up a year later going and joining First Hawaiian Bank as president and chief operating officer. Little did I know, at the time, First Hawaiian Bank was owned by the largest bank in France, BNP Paribas. It's one of the largest banks in the world. And they were looking for ways to raise capital because their regulators required them to increase their level of capital. And so essentially, they wanted to sell the company and they wanted to do it through public offerings. And the good news is that I had just worked for 2 public companies. In fact, took Hawaiian Telecom to public on NASDAQ a couple of years after we emerged from bankruptcy. And so I was ready to go, you know, and so basically worked together with the team and we came up with a plan and we took it public. You know, taking a 160-year-old company public was different, but fun. And so it allowed us to sort of bring First Hawaiian back as an independent company, although owned publicly, it was no longer owned by a French company. And that was another wonderful, you know, leadership experience. And by this time, you know, I had worked at all these companies. I was on the board of Hawaiian Telecom still, which we ended up selling the company to a larger company, telecom company on the mainland. I was still on the board of Alaska Air Group, which is the 5th largest airline in the US. And as you guys know, we're acquiring Hawaiian. On the board of Alexander and Baldwin, one of the big 5 companies. I actually chair the board now. And then I just got appointed to Park Pacific, which is based in Houston, but 40% of their business is here at the refinery here in Hawaii. And like I said earlier, I chaired the board of Queens for 6 years, but I was on the board, I think, for 12. And during that time that I was on the board of Queens, we acquired Queens West, Oahu. We acquired North Hawaii Community Hospital. We took over the transplant center. So just a lot of incredible experiences that I was able to have, 90% of them here in Hawaii. And I got to the point where, I probably could have kept working that hard. But when I say working hard, I was in my office at 5 every day. I never knew what time I was going to get home, and I was traveling up to 2 weeks of every month. And you get to a point where you don't have to, why do it, right? And so talked to my wife about it and decided to retire, so to speak. And that's when I created Hopu Capital. And Hopu Capital has no employees besides me and my wife. It's really the entity that I use to serve my 2 family clients that I've known for years and make a lot of private investments, Hawaii, as well as some infrastructure type private equity stuff on the mainland. And I live more of a normal life now because of it. And I look back on that journey. My foundation was my education that I got from here, but it was really the opportunity to lead, And so when I think about the lessons that I've learned from leading, there are really 5 kind of what I call leadership attributes that were, I think, critical for me. The first is integrity. Integrity is like the cornerstone of leadership. If you don't have integrity, you have nothing, because your credibility is everything. People follow people that they trust. And if you're not a person with integrity, you ain't going to be successful as a leader. Plain and simple. So I always say that the most important ingredient in leadership is integrity. The second is self-discipline. I say that the price tag of leadership is self-discipline, because being a leader is most of the time hard. It's not all glory. It really is hard. And the way I look at self-discipline as a leader is, if you're in charge, you have to make sure that you have a good team and that you are all aligned. And what I found that helps you get there is you work together to develop a plan that you are all a part of and that you all buy into and that you are all accountable for executing together. And as the leader, you empower them and you stay out of the way and you clear a lot when they need your help. But that is kind of the self-discipline of being a leader, is making sure that there's a structure of a plan and accountability to allow you to get to where you want to get to. The third is what I call the most powerful attribute of leadership. It's caring. At the end of the day, you have to care. Yeah, you have to care about who you work with. You have to care about the institution that you're serving. You have to care about who it serves, and it needs to drive you. And what I've learned is that people know whether you care or not, and it's not something you can fake. Yeah, and so when people know that you care about what you're doing and you care about them, it's amazing what they will do, not just for you, but for the organization that we all serve. The fourth is to be teachable. Just because you're the boss doesn't mean you have to know everything. I had high leadership roles in so many different industries. It's impossible for me to be an expert in telecom, in energy, education, in banking. And so that allowed me to rely on people who are part of the team. And I learned a lot from the people that, I worked together with. And I think being a leader and being vulnerable in that way and being teachable allows you to be good, because when your teammates know that you need to rely on them, makes them feel good. You know, makes them feel valued because they are. Yeah. And then the last is courage. You know, as a leader, you will encounter so many things, probably almost daily, that are hard. You know, hard decisions, judgment calls that you have to make, some impacting people, some high risk. And there's only so much analysis you can do. And at the end of the day, there comes a point in time where you have to have courage to just go for it, you know, and, you know, do the right thing at the right time in the right way, with the right intentions, and just go for it. And so those were really the lessons that I learned as I went through this leadership journey that was pretty much 30 years as a C-level executive. And I've kind of been retired for the last 5 years, and I still try to implement those things in what I do. So the two stories that I will share with you about how these attributes are sort of integrated into my leadership. One is a personal story, and one is a professional story. The personal story, I always feel like, you know, leadership really starts at home. Yeah. And so you just don't lead in your job, you lead in your home. And back in, I was 19 years old. It was the summer before my junior year in college here at UH. I was involved in an organization here at UH, and a group of us decided that we were gonna go to Colorado Springs to attend training program. And so we were all excited about it. It was gonna be in the middle of June. So we all, you know, a lot of us were from the neighbor island, so we went home for a few weeks, and then we're all gonna meet up here on Oahu at Honolulu Airport, because we were gonna fly to Colorado. And so when I went home, the night before I was leaving, we had a nice family get together. Even though my parents were divorced, my mom was together with us at my dad's house, and his wife, and my half siblings, my siblings, and we're having a great time. And the next morning, my dad and his wife and my sister and two stepsisters were gonna drop me off at the airport, go to Hilo for the day, and then come back to Kona. So they did drop me off in the morning, flew to Honolulu, and we're taking a red eye to Denver. So we all board the plane, and literally the plane door was about to shut, and this flight attendant comes up to me and says, "Are you Mr. Yeaman?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "You have to come with me." What are you talking about? This flight's gonna leave. He said, "No, it's really important. You have to come with me." So I'm like, what is going on, right? I knew once I stepped off that plane was gone. I don't know how I was gonna get to where I was gonna go. And so they said, "You gotta call this number." So I went to a payphone, called the number, couldn't get through because I was trying to call another payphone apparently. So the United folks took me into their offices, let me use their phone, and I called. And on the other line was my mom. And she was hysterical. She told me that my dad, folks got into a car accident, they were killed by a drunk driver. So my dad, my stepmom, and my 10-year-old sister, who was my mom's daughter, were killed. And my two other stepsisters who were in the car were injured, but they were okay. And so here I was in Honolulu Airport by myself, now 19 years old, thinking, what is going on? What am I gonna do? Right? Why me? Right? And after I kind of got a hold of myself, I said, okay, what would my dad want me to do in this situation? And being the oldest of his children, it was clear that I needed to step up and lead the family in whatever way I could as a 19-year-old. So that's what I did. You know, I flew back to Kona the next morning and really tried to lead with a sense of integrity, you know, self-discipline, caring, courage, and being teachable. And the integrity, the caring part obviously came easy, right? Because this is my family. The integrity was really about making the best decision for the family or the children, and not necessarily what I wanted always to do in the situation. You know, and self-discipline and courage was about doing the hard things, you know, being a part of telling my siblings who survived what happened to their parents. You know, and being teachable was about not trying to just rely on myself, but to talk to my uncles and aunties and my pastor to really just get their advice on how do we navigate through this situation. And, you know, it's been 37 years or so now, almost next month. And I'm happy to say that my siblings, you know, are all great, well-adjusted adults, and most of them have their own children. But it's a situation where, you know, thrust into a leadership role and really how did I apply the principles of leadership during that time. But the professional side was really around the Hawaiian Telecom story. You know, when I went there, as I shared with you earlier, you know, this company was essentially bankrupt, but not yet in bankruptcy. It was a phone company in a time that the world had pivoted to broadband and other IP-based technology. And so, you know, essentially, it's like, first thing I had to do was I met with all the employees, and I basically told them the truth. I said, you know, I came to be a part of your team. This is our situation. You know, the integrity part was telling them the truth of the situation, but telling them what we're gonna do about it and how we needed to work together. And what I learned was, you know, people can handle the truth. They may not like it, but they can handle it, and they know when you're not telling them the truth. You know, the self-discipline part was, unfortunately, the company was being led by executives who were not from Hawaii. They were all recruited from outside of Hawaii, and it's not that they were not capable. They just didn't understand Hawaii, and they didn't have that heart connection to Hawaii. And so I basically had to change out the entire team except for the CFO, who was really solid. And so built the right team, we put the plan together, and we shared the plan with all of our employees, and we kept them informed of our progress along the way. And that was the hard work of self-discipline. The caring was about, you know, I was there because I wanted to be there. I left a really good opportunity to join that team to really, because I wanted to be able to help and turn things around. And teachable was, you know, I was learning the telecom business on the fly. And we needed to transform this company. And so I talked to a lot of people, you know, in terms of what tried to be teachable during that time. And then the courage was every day, you know, making tough decisions. And so ultimately, it was a privilege to be able to work at Hawaiian Telecom during that time, really work together to take it through bankruptcy. And, you know, I can't remember, I guess I left 5 years after we emerged from bankruptcy. And I'm proud that, you know, every quarter was a profitable quarter. So we went from a company that when I joined was losing $150 million a year, had $1.2 billion of debt on its balance sheet, to a company that we restructured to $300 million of debt and was profitable every quarter. That was a huge undertaking, but something that I know we as Hawaii Telecom team, I'm collectively super proud of what we were able to do together. So that was kind of the journey and the things that I learned and how they were applied in my life. And, I'll just end by saying, leadership is a privilege. And with that privilege comes tremendous responsibility. And I think if you lead with integrity, with self-discipline, with courage, being teachable, and most of all, caring, you'll accomplish great things as a leader. And I'll just end where I began by just thanking you guys for the opportunity to be here and to share my story with you, and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
For this next part of the seminar, we will have a Q&A portion with Eric. Audience, feel free to raise your hand and ask any questions. For those of you who are on Zoom, just feel free to put your questions in the chat.
I asked this because, we talk to our students about trying to ensure that they take advantage of their opportunities and their time here at UH, right?
Yeah.
Because Hawaii is very relational based, right? And so they build it's their opportunity to build their relationships while they're in school. And I know you still hang out with the same guys you started with 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe talk about how your time here kind of really continues to shape you as a person today.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. When I came to UH, it was the big city. I mean, I never traveled to the mainland. When I came here, this was really a big trip for me. And my first day here, I met a guy from Castle High School. And he introduced me to all of his Castle friends, close friends, and they kind of became my close friends. And they're the people that Dean Morioka knows, and we still, do things together. There were periods in the almost 40 years that, it was difficult for me to get together with them. And so when I made this pivot, it was a commitment of mine to sort of make sure that I was more available to them, but we never really lost touch. And those relationships are really important because one guy is in government relations, he's a lobbyist. One guy basically runs the Japan advertising for Hawaii tourism. And one guy basically is an entrepreneur. And so, we share experiences and knowledge and wisdom with each other, but most of all, we look out for each other. I think the other thing too is when you're a student here, the club, I joined Beta Alpha Psi, which was the accounting fraternity, honors fraternity. And it was the critical organization that put me in touch with every recruiter of every major firm in the field. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know how I would have met these folks and where my career would have gone. So, I always say that you get out what you make of your education and opportunity that, University of Hawaii in this case provides. And I'm super thankful of my experience here and the relationships and the foundation that it provided for my career. Was it you had?
Yeah, one of the things I started here in engineering, and I've seen like my career pivot over the years to really having to understand a balance sheet, understand financials. And that understanding, and so I'm kind of using this to soapbox a little bit, right? I think this has to be one of the best ways for people to see in the engineering space, how important it is to understand the decisions that we make to become good business decisions.
Right.
It's really easy to have stuff that you end up with $1.2 billion of debt and are unprofitable. And there's only one path that those companies go to, which is out of business.
Right.
So if you can just, everybody that's listening can just resonate with the importance of just understanding that bit of the things that you decide to do in life and how it's beneficial to society, and if it's a business that it's making profitable, it's a profitable thing that you're doing. Those two together can make anybody more successful than if you forget. I didn't kind of look into the business side until, 25 years in. So I feel like I might have missed my better calling in life, but I think seeing it now and understanding how important that business eye is. And I hope that everybody gets that out of what you just said, right? And give you these opportunities.
Telecom is an engineering company. Kiko is an engineering company, but it's a business, right? And you have to understand, the implications of decisions you make financially on a company, because especially when you have many lives who are at stake and trusting your leadership with it. One of the questions that they had provided, as potential questions was, are there things that I wish that I, knew when I was in college that I figured out after the fact? And one of them was, even though I went into the business side, there's something called getting business. And when I went into public accounting, I thought I was just going to do accounting work for, my clients. But how do you get your clients, right? They don't just walk in the door. You have, I did not learn how to really sell, our services until I was forced to, got promoted to manager. And now it was expected of me to grow a book of business, not expect to have that business just come to me. And so it's just another point of reinforcing. You study a discipline, but all things kind of lead to being in business, right? And all the different elements and facets that come with that is important.
We have a question from the online audience. They said, Eric, can you please share your experience on the balancing work and family time? I was lucky to witness your hard work when you audited a construction company during early part of my career. Still remember clearly that you work from early in the morning till late in the evening. Also, what is your advice on stress management?
Asking the wrong person. No, work-life balance is, I learned, is maybe not the right question. The right question is work-life choices. When you make choices, it comes with implications, right? And so I chose a path to be a C-level executive. And it's very difficult to be a C-level executive and have a normal 8 to 5, 9 to 5 day. It's impossible, honestly. And so, when I made those decisions, I knew that with that was going to come, responsibility that was going to take up more time. And which is really the reason why when I got to a point where I could, I made the pivot, because I didn't have to nor wanted to do that anymore. So, whenever you make choices, a lot of times if you're getting a promotion, that comes with more money, it usually comes with more work and more responsibility that it's probably going to take more time. Oftentimes, sometimes maybe it doesn't, but more often it does. And so when you make those choices, you have to not only think about all the good things like the more money and promotion, but you have to think about what are the work implications and the impact on your family and all of that. And so that's one part of the question. The other about stress management. What I try to do is I try to essentially exercise every day unless my body tells me to rest. And now that my kids are at home, my dog is like a source of tremendous joy for me. So I look forward to, seeing him in the morning, and feeding him and taking him out and doing the same thing when I get home every day. So the point there is get a dog. No, the point is, the point is find things that allow you to relax and make sure that you integrate that in your day. I actually learned from my son. My son, when he was growing up, he almost always went to sleep on time because he always felt that if he got 8 hours sleep, he was doing himself well. But when he would study, he would take breaks and watch his favorite sitcoms that would make him laugh. And then he'd go back to study and then he'd come and watch the sitcom, make him laugh. And that was his way of managing his stress. So, for whatever it is for you, try to integrate that into your daily life.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider being like a mentor? And if you did, what is like one of the main goals you'll want to achieve with like your mentee again?
Yeah, no, there are folks that look at me as their mentor. Some of them are older than me. So I don't always feel comfortable with that. And some of them are younger, but I always start with making sure that I gain clarity about what a mentee, if they're looking for career, mentorship, try to make sure I'm clear about, what that person's goals are so that my advice can align towards their goals. And a lot of times that's not easy because a lot of times people don't know what they want in their life. And, sometimes that's okay, but it's hard for anybody to help you if you don't know yourself what you want. And so in those cases, I try to draw it out and I say, okay, based on this, what about that? What about that? Facilitate the discussion. But I also find a mentor-mentee relationship is one that has to occur organically. If you kind of just put two people together, it doesn't result in a long-term mentor-mentee relationship because it didn't occur organically. Not that the person can't get something out of that, but the longer term, like my relationship with Walter started off as a mentor. And I'll just share a quick story. When I accepted the position to go work for Hawaiian Telcom, Walter looked at me and he says, Eric, we need to talk. Let's talk right now. Okay. So he said, one thing you got to understand is that you're the CEO. You're in charge. I'm the chairman of the board. Use me as much as you want, as little as you want. It's up to you. I won't be offended either way. But the one thing you have to know about me is that if you ask me for my opinion, I'm going to give you my honest opinion. And if you decide to follow my advice, opinion I gave you, I'm going to support you 100%. If you decide to do something different than what I advise you to do, I'm going to support you 100%. That was a true mentor-mentee relationship because it really gave me the opportunity to ask him what might be considered sometimes the dumb, stupid question that you might feel uncomfortable about asking. He created a safe environment for me to just use him as much as I wanted to or as little as I wanted to. He was always there. So that was a organic type of relationship that grew, that became, till this day, I consider him a close friend, but also a mentor because I will seek his advice on different things.
Thank you. You mentioned, you brought up another good point, but you mentioned like briefly that you kind of knew what you wanted to do from a young age. And like you said, like a lot of us right now, we're in a time where we don't really know, I guess, what we want. How did you, I guess, find that calling or like know what you wanted to do at such a young age, I guess?
Yeah. I really don't know, to be honest. You know, this is the best I can piece together is I kind of had this knack for numbers and math.
Mm.
And, you know, when I was growing up in elementary school, you started with the red book, then you got the orange book, then the yellow book. And I used to get those books and just finish them. Like I just would power through it way ahead of the teacher explaining things, and it just kind of came natural. So I kind of felt like, you know, I was probably good at math and numbers, and, you know, my grandfather apparently was an accountant. And so I said, well, maybe I should go into accounting. And I think I just convinced myself, you know, at a young age, you know, being driven that, okay, I'm gonna be an accountant. Okay, who's the #1 firm in the world? Okay, I'm gonna go work for them. It was Arthur Andersen. So I just kind of created this path with a lot of ignorance, to be honest, but I think it was God's way of turbo boosting me into really what he wanted me to do in my life. And it was way bigger and way more than I ever dreamt it would be. And I'm grateful for that.
Hey, Eric, it seems to me, I think it is true that really the only job you actually sought out for was the first one, the Arthur Andersen one. And everything after that, all your pivots was, or I call it tap on the shoulders. You didn't seek out, people sought out you, right? And I mean, do you think it was largely due to the principles of leadership you talked about, integrity, all that, the hard work, obviously you did, stuff like that you generated the opportunities yourself because of that? Do you kind of see it that way? Because you obviously, like you said, you didn't plan it to play out this way, but it did, right?
I would see it that way. And, you know, I never did anything to focus on money or to get to the next level. I just tried to do the best job I could with the responsibility I had. And if people needed my help, who I was working with, I always tried to be there to help. Even, you know, my bosses, if there was ways I could take load off of them to help them, I did that, you know, and really just tried to seize the opportunity that I had in front of me. And I think that was recognized, you know, that I had the right maybe motivation and drive to do my best in what I was given, and you know, people trust that.
All right, thank you, Eric.
The hour went by really fast, and, you know, I mean, I just love hanging out with Eric because he and I share many of the same values. And, you know, I mean, this is why I love talking with him, having him share his views with others, because it's so valuable. And you know, kind of to Josh's point, you know, and to what Eric's been talking about, and Rodney kind of pointed it out, is you may think you know what you want to do, and you may really want to do that, but really it's if you know, bust your butt, do the hard work, and you excel at what you do, the opportunities will call for you, and those are really what you make of it. And so, you know, like Eric, it's I don't think he ever envisioned a lot of the opportunities that he took, because they came to him because of what he did, because of all the hard work. So I appreciate what you do as an individual, but also what you've done for the state. So thank you very much. So this was all our last seminar for the semester. It's gone by fast. We will pick this up back in September with the leadership seminar series again, sponsored by the Ken and Donna Hayashida Ohana family. So thank you very much all. Have a great weekend. Be safe, and we'll see you next semester. So thank you very much. Aloha.